A while back I made a video in which I commented on the Reader's Digest 100 best novels of all time list. And if you haven't seen that video, you can still watch it here. Now, we all agreed that that list was absolute nonsense. But it had me thinking, could I do better? Well, the answer was yes. Yes, I absolutely can. So I did it. I ranked my own top 10 favorite of all time classics. I already realized that this list has a very peculiar top 3 and it will probably cause the comment section to go aflame. Do keep in mind, these are my top 10 favorites. These are not supposed to be the best books ever written. And there's even one book that had totally doubting myself. But if you want to know which one that is, you'll have to watch all the way to the end of this video. This intro has been long enough already. I'll just link all the books I talk about down below in the description. Let's rank the classics. Coming in at number 10 is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. And I love the March Sisters. First of all, the whole persona that Louisa May Alcott was when she found out that she could make money with writing instead of doing like women work, she jumped into it. And when her publisher asked her to write a girly book, she outright refused and wrote Little Women instead. Because it's not a girly book. I try to reread Little Women around Christmas each year. It is, according to me, the best Christmas book ever written, and it's the characters for me. No matter how different each of the March Sisters are, no matter whatever life throws at them, they will stick together and they will try to make the best of their situation. And it is such a positive and lovely book, and I know what is still coming on this list today, so we need some positivity. And Little Women is all that for me. It is a cozy blanket, it is a warm cup of tea, it is a cinnamon bun, it is a lovely book. But it is more than just a cozy book. It's also about war, about cultures clashing, about politics, personal ambition, family responsibilities. It packs a lot if you're willing to dig beneath the surface. So yeah, absolutely one of my all-time favorites, coming in at number 10 on this list today, Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. Then at number 9 we go a little bit more dark. Forget the sparkly vampires and instead listen to the song of the Children of the Night. This is Dracula by Bram Stoker. I mean, come on, it doesn't get more gothic novel than this one. Although we might see the genre a bit way up in this list again. It is dark, it is visceral, it is psychological, it packs so much in a book, and for once, the vampire is actually a vampire. And Dracula for me is the epitome of everything that was Victorian. On the one hand, you have that lust for the dark and that fear of the unknown, and everything that comes from outside the UK can be a threat. But on the other side, there is that hidden undercurrent of swooning and eroticism and someone dark and strange that comes into your home uninvited and sweeps you off your feet and takes you away to whatever place. And with it, Bram Stoker sets like the mold for everything that we know to be vampire today. Yes, it is a horror novel, but without the gore and the slashing. Its horror comes from shadows subtly moving, a curtain that dances in the breeze, a sound outside. It's storytelling at its best. I think I was 18 when I first read Bram Stoker's Dracula, and I fell in love with it immediately, and I still am today. And one of the interesting tidbits I think about this book is that Bram Stoker, the author, believed some parts to be true. He also believed that the ruins of a medieval monastery not far from where he lived were haunted and that there was a creature living there. So everything starts to come together and just sparks his imagination to write Dracula. Compiling the story from letters, diaries, testimonies, just switching point of views from one character to another throughout the whole book makes this book for some very interesting reading. The characters are not just there for mindless heroism. They are intelligent, they have their fears, their lusts, their ambitions, and even Dracula himself, the ultimate villain, is far more layered and complicated than we would ever come to expect from a monster like he is. I could easily rant about this book for hours, not going to. So at number 9 we had Dracula by Bram Stoker, and let's leave it at that. At number 8 we have the ultimate revenge story. I've talked about this one in my big books video. Again, if you haven't seen it, click here. And it is The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. You can read it as an adventure story, you can read it as a revenge story, but it packs a serious punch. At one moment the book is really comical, at the other one it is really tragic. Our main hero, Edmond Dantes, is, if nothing, ever so human. Despite his wealth, his cunning, his charm, at the end of the day he is still fallible, he is still very human with all of his emotions and flaws. And that's what makes this story so compelling. This is not your typical hero. There is nothing heroic about being imprisoned for 14 years and just plotting your revenge. And because he's not that untouchable hero, you will absolutely fall in love with Edmond Dantes. This is one of those characters in literature that will stay with you for the rest of your life. He was the Dark Avenger before there were any comics, and you have to respect that. And yes, if you want to, you can read the book like a commentary on human nature. A criticism of class society, of the wealthy against the poor. Sure, you can do all that, but in the end, it will always be all about Edmond Dantes executing his revenge plans. The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas at number 8. At number 7 we have that other great Gothic novel written by one of the powerhouses of female authors. She was the daughter of a philosopher and a feminist. She was married to a poet and she had Byron over for tea. There is no doubt about Mary Shelley's literary achievements. She was a powerful writer, she wrote a lot of things, some of them very political. She wrote as a woman, a feminist, a liberal. But we will always remember her for that one night, that one bet that she made that she could write a better Gothic novel. And that novel is, of course, Frankenstein. If you haven't read Frankenstein yet, forget everything you think to know about this book. Forget every reference you've seen in pop culture or in comics or whatever. This book is something special. And the most striking thing about Frankenstein, which is beautifully written and very well storytold and everything technical that you want, but the one thing that always strikes me is it ever so well mirrors, reflects the anxiety, the social anxiety the Victorians must have had. It is a story about God versus science, and what will these new sciences bring? Have we become God ourselves, and how far can we push this? And again, the monster in this book is something that will probably shatter your heart. It is not the villain of the story, but then again it would be too simple, too easy to call Victor Frankenstein the villain. This book is deeply psychological. It is about fear, about ambition, about what is our place in the world, and I absolutely love it. It leaves you with an uneasy feeling that is the mark of true horror for me. Again, forget the slashing, forget the gore. This is what horror should be. This is a powerful story told in a very powerful way. And if you happen to be a fan of audiobooks, then I highly recommend the performance by Simon Vance. He does an excellent job in this audiobook, especially his portrayal of the monster as well. It is chef's kiss, it is that next tier. If you're a fan of audiobooks, do check that one out. For me, the ultimate Gothic novel has to be Frankenstein by Mary Shelley at number 7. At number 6 we have a modern classic that is all about love and the fear that it brings with it. It gets all of the melancholy words that I can imagine, and it has broken my heart. And this book is, of course, Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. I mean, the synopsis of this book couldn't be any shorter. There's a man who falls in love with another man. It is a forbidden love, and when his fiancée, his girlfriend, comes over to visit, he just abandons the other man with all of the problems that it causes. That's what the book is about, but it is written in such an emotionally devastating way, in such beautiful prose, with such great descriptions and excellent character work. I mean, at one time I hated Giovanni, at the other time I always hated David, but I could see how human he was. This book truly deserves the title of classic for me. And the thing about Giovanni's Room for me is that it is not just a gay novel. It is not just a novel about the love between two men. Yes, it is all that, but it is so much more. In my experience from all the books that I've read, this is one of the first books in history that has actually described gay love between two men as something very normal. It is not gay love, it is love. It just happens to be between two men. And that in itself is an extraordinary achievement. Now, as you can tell, I am a big James Baldwin fan, and Giovanni's Room has always been that book that surprised me. It ambushed me with an emotional gut punch that I never restored totally from, and it has always stayed with me. It is one of my absolute favorite modern classics of all times, and having to place it at number 6 somewhat hurts. But when you see what's still coming, you might just understand. Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin at number 6. At number 5, halfway there, we have our first Russian novel, and it is The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. Again, I've talked about this book in length in my Big Books video, and I still stand by the fact that I think this is the best book that Dostoevsky has ever written. He had written all of the books society wanted him to write, so now he could have a go at what he really wanted. And that was The Brothers Karamazov. And this book can be read in so many ways. Yes, you could argue that it is a murder mystery, which it really isn't, but it is also a book about you and me, and that's the strongest feat that I've ever seen a book do. This book will take a character and make it your mirror, and you'll not like what you'll see. This book is about how we as humans try to live a good life but have no clue whatsoever what a good life actually is. You will love these characters, you will hate these characters, you will curse them, you will pine for them. These characters are more human than human, and it makes for one of the best novels ever written. And despite its sheer volume, this book is not about plot. The funny thing about The Brothers Karamazov is that Dostoevsky himself did not know how it would evolve and how it would end when he started writing it. He just sat down, started to write, and allowed the story and the characters to evolve as he saw fit. This book adapts itself to the reader. If you start reading it with a cynical mind, then this will be a very dark and cynical book. But on the other hand, if you go in all optimistic and loving life, then this book might just prove to be a very optimistic and soulful experience. I've said it before and I'll keep saying it, this book is a mirror and it mirrors you as a reader. And that is the trademark of a true literary masterpiece. The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. The next book, and do remind, this is not even our top 3 yet, is regarded as a masterpiece of American literature. It went on to win a Pulitzer Prize, it has sold over 80 million copies worldwide, has been translated in over 40 languages, and it is a story about a young woman from Alabama. This is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. For me, To Kill a Mockingbird is one of those very rare books that does not give in to the idea that deep down everyone is good, because not everyone is. And to powerfully underline that notion, you take a terrible, gruesome story and narrate it through a child's eyes. These very young, innocent eyes do not see color, they do not see race, they just see people. And it is only when adults and their surroundings tells them about stereotypes and about racism that they will experience it for the first time. It was published in the early 60s, at a time where in the United States the civil rights movement was gaining momentum and people started to be confronted with racial inequality. It quickly resonated with readers across cultural lines because it answered a fundamental question. How do I get along with someone who is different from me? At its core, To Kill a Mockingbird is a book about empathy and about compassion. To Kill a Mockingbird is an important book, and it will always be an important book. I don't care if it was the only real novel that Harper Lee wrote. I don't care if Truman Capote aided her in the endeavor. I just absolutely love this book. An absolute classic that everyone should read. At number 4, just shy of our top 3, To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. Then we enter our top 3. And at number 3 we find one of my absolute favorite authors of all times. And again, it pains me that this book is only at number 3. This is To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. Now, if you have been following me along on this channel, you know I am a bit of a fanboy when it concerns Virginia Woolf. I've studied her life, I've studied her work, I've read her love letters. Yeah, I like Virginia Woolf. And To the Lighthouse might not be the book that you were expecting by Virginia Woolf, but it truly is one of her best in my opinion. This is the first real stream of consciousness novel that Virginia will write, and it is something else. Imagine you live in a world that has been turned upside down. We've just survived the Great War, the big institutions, the big morals of the past have failed us, and we all have to start anew again. We have to reinvent the world, so why not reinvent something like the novel? And that is basically what Virginia Woolf did with this book, with To the Lighthouse, where she really adopted this new stream of consciousness style and forgot all of the rules that there were about writing a novel. So don't expect this book to make any sense book-wise. There is no plot. It is all about the characters and their internal monologue and about their journey. And I think that a journey is an ideal metaphor for Virginia's writing. It is never a snapshot. It is not about standing still. It is about walking, about moving, where you came from and where you're going. I could write a love letter to Virginia herself, but sadly she is long dead now, so I'll have to settle for her beautiful books. And for me, one of my favorites will always be To the Lighthouse. To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf at number 3. And then at number 2, just shy of that first place, we find another Russian novel, but not the one that you're expecting. My number 2 is and will always be Nabokov's Lolita. Now, in my experience, there are two kinds of people. Those that have read the book and actually know what it is about, and those that have never read the book, have no clue what is going on, and are just shouting that they will not read this vile book. Yes, I will fight you. Yes, I will die on this hill, but Lolita by Nabokov is a literary masterpiece. And here's the thing about Lolita. We all know what kind of a heinous man Humbert is. There is no one who will disagree that his lust and his love for the young girl, the young Lolita, is absolutely disgusting. You may call it love, but it is not that, Mr. Humbert. So we all agree. But then, and this is what makes this book a masterpiece, in my opinion, you start reading the book and you start understanding him. Humbert is a very charismatic character. He's eloquent, he's flamboyant, he's well-mannered, educated, and as he defends himself in court, basically, you yourself, as a reader, as a member of the jury, catch yourself starting to understand him. You catch yourself starting to feel empathy for this vile creature. And at one point you might even catch yourself starting to doubt that he is as guilty as everyone says. And that's the moment when you throw away this book and just go out and have a walk. This is what makes this book special. This is why people fall for the words and the charisma of cult leaders. This is why some people find themselves attracted to mass murderers and serial killers. This is a very dark mind magic that Nabokov wields, and you have to credit him for it. And yes, Nabokov knew that this book was going to be controversial when it came out. It was written to be controversial. It was written to kick people in the shins and have them think about themselves and their own viewpoints before just shouting that this was a vile thing that should be forbidden. This book is strangely charismatic, this book is strangely funny and witty and reads ever so fluently until you realize again that this is something that you should not be enjoying. It is a dark book, it is a controversial book, and I absolutely love it. If you have not read it before, do give it a chance. That's all I'm asking. This book might be for you, might not be for you, but at least give it a try. My number 2, Lolita by Nabokov. And then before we reveal the absolute number 1, we have to talk about one book that decided to be a bit of a spoil sport. And this is a book that I've started to read on multiple occasions, but have never finished. This is a book that is notoriously difficult to read. This is a book that some people claim to be an absolute literary masterpiece, while others think that it is a bunch of dribble. Yes, I am talking about James Joyce's Ulysses. And here's my predicament. I don't know which one of those two types of people is correct. Yes, it might just be a literary masterpiece. The intertextualism alone in this book, the references to other books all throughout literary history, is amazing. And the more that you have read and the more that you know, the more that you will discover in this book. This also makes it a very difficult book to read, and at every page you doubt yourself and ask if you have missed something. And then on the other hand, you have the figure that James Joyce was. And one of his quotes has always stayed with me and always reminds me of this book, of Ulysses. James Joyce once famously said that if you want to be immortal, all you have to do is write a book that is so difficult and so impossible that scholars and students will still talk about it decades and centuries after you're dead. And this comes from a man who wrote with crayons. So I often have wondered that this book is a prank. This book is indeed that, a prank that James Joyce pulled to become famous and immortal. And after all of these years, I still don't know in which category I have to place Ulysses by James Joyce. So I didn't include it in this top 10, but it did deserve a special reference. If you think you know, let me know down below in the comments, because I am dying to find out. Ulysses by James Joyce, the ever enigma. And then we have my number 1, and I do realize that this is going to be controversial. You might not agree, you probably will not agree, and that's fine. My number 1, my favorite classic to read and reread time after time again, after all of these years, is still, and if you are a regular viewer of my channel, you might have an inkling already, it is the best jazz age book ever written. It is, of course, The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Now before you click away, hear me out. This book is a timepiece. It is an excellent snapshot of a special period in American history, the Jazz Age, the 20s and the 30s. And it shows how life and society must have been, ever bigger, ever faster. But at the same time, Fitzgerald already predicted that the American dream was an illusion. A little white lie that was used to keep people content and happy and striving and ambitious. The Great Gatsby is class society in America. There is no hope of attaining the ranks of the upper class if you aren't born in it. Yes, you can be a mistress, yes, you can be a servant to them, yes, you can be their car mechanic, but you'll never be one of them. And Fitzgerald already saw this, Fitzgerald knew this, so he made all of his characters, except one, these entitled, archetypical, stereotypical people that he saw all around him. And it is a marvel to see, a masterpiece to read. And once you know all this, once you know that all of your efforts are futile, all of your ambitions are hopeless, then it is the last sentence of this book that will destroy you. So we beat on, boats against the currents, borne back ceaselessly into the past. I absolutely adore The Great Gatsby. It was the one book that I immediately knew at which place I would place it. It is my number one, and I will fight you over this. So do let me know down below in the comments. Do you agree? Do you disagree? You probably will. Let's have a civilized conversation. Let's not turn YouTube ablaze, but do comment. Let's have that discussion. Which is your top 3, your favorite classic of all times? Let me know down below and we'll talk classics some more. Thank you for watching. As always, it means the world to me that you're here. And if you are looking for some more excellent literary recommendations, well, that's easy. All you have to do is watch this video.